So in this video, we're going to be talking about the way the government has treated student nurses with a lot of contempt, and the government has treated NHS staff really badly over the decade they've been in charge, and so it should be kind of no surprise that they're treating student nurses like rubbish, thing as they've treated fully qualified NHS workers like rubbish as well. So let's dig into this one. So it says here, student nurses who joined the NHS front lines in England months before their training ended in order to join the fight against COVID-19 have voiced their anger after contracts were terminated earlier than they expected as the pandemic comes under control, for now at least. As nursing unions called on the government to offer clarity to those affected, the Shadow Health Secretary Jonathan Ashworth told Parliament that the students who had joined the frontline 6 months ago as part of the coronavirus effort were seeing their paid placements schemes terminated early, leaving them no income. Surely this is not the way to treat nursing staff, he told Matt Hancock. Hancock, who had announced in March that 18,700 final year students will move to the front line to aid service staff during the COVID-19 crisis, responded by saying it was wrong to suggest that student nurses and midwives are being made redundant. All student and nurses and midwives are required to complete placements during their training, he added. So what's happened here is their contracts were meant to end in July, and so the government terminated the contracts. And so they have backtracked on this slightly, and we'll get to that in a minute. But why would you do this? It doesn't make sense. Like, you don't know if there's going to be a second wave, and B, what, like, some of these people, like, I think I don't know if it's mentioned in this article, but some of these student nurses, like, they gave up university placements where they would have finished at a certain time. I think some of them had things like second jobs, families, and they couldn't look after these families whilst they're working in the hospitals for the risk of giving COVID to their families. And so why would you terminate their contracts early? Like, this government doesn't understand how to gain any sort of goodwill out of people at all. And this would have, like, it wouldn't have given you goodwill to keep them on. You could have made a point of it that, look, we're still keeping student nurses up until the end of their contracts, like we agreed upon, despite the fact that COVID cases are going down. You could have done that. It would have been a really stupid thing to take a victory lap over. But why would you terminate their contracts for? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. And it's beyond belief. They're very angry with this. And this is an article from March with student nurses talking about, I'm very nervous, about going to the front lines because they haven't quite finished their training. You have to be positive or you'll lose your head. These are quotes from some of the people, some of the student nurses, but you can see that they were very scared, especially because there was a massive PPE crisis as well in the country. But these people, these brave student nurses, they stepped up. They stepped up, and this is what you do. This is what the government does to people who step up because of their failings over the decade. Is this how you treat people? Honestly. And this is on top of the fact that a lot of NHS workers are worried about a second wave. This article will get a separate video done on it, but I think it's important to note that now that the dust has settled and we have time to reflect, what have we learned from the first peak of COVID and how we cope with another one. We understand this illness a lot better. We know what it does to people who are sick enough to stay in hospital. For a start, it kills almost 40% of them. Obviously the numbers may not be correct, but more if you are elderly. Many of the survivors suffer horrible lung damage and storms of inflammation, often needing weeks on a ventilator. And so this article from March, you can see that there are NHS workers who are absolutely exhausted, who, I think if there's a second wave, then there will be way more breakdowns than there were. And this is something we've talked about before, where Dr. Khan pointed out there's a rise in suicides and self-harm amongst NHS staff because of the fact that they're struggling to deal with this outbreak. And this is how the government treats frontline workers. And so in a U-turn, which is not surprising of this government, to be honest, and sometimes it should be commended that they do make the right decision, but the fact that you made the wrong decision in the first place shows your instincts are wrong. You're pulling Elizabeth Warren, essentially. So it says here, student nurses will be paid until the end of the contract of their NHS frontline of their NHS frontline contracts. So the Royal College of Nursing has welcomed an assurance that student nurses drafted into frontline NHS services battling coronavirus in England will have their contracts honoured following a period of confusion and distress. So they're saying, we didn't get the news out properly, but all you had to say was, look, we're terminating their contracts early so they can go back to university, but they will still be paid out because we had a contract, we had an agreement. That's how you would have phrased it if you didn't want this to happen in the first place. But because there was outrage, you had to change it, didn't you? I'm embarrassed. It's embarrassing. Like, these government advisors who think they're so slick and intelligent, they think the public are stupid. They think you're stupid. But I don't think you're stupid. I think you're pretty smart, because I'm hoping you subscribe to the channel, and if you have, you're pretty smart. And if you haven't, well, you know how you can get smart. But they think that, they can say, there was confusion, and things didn't get out in the press, and the sun was in my eyes, and I had to go to the shop, but I forgot my mask, and so I had to go home and get my mask. That's why we forgot to add this bit. That's what these guys are like. It seems incompetent or treating people with contempt. There's your options. Which one do you pick? Go. And so, we haven't got, and they would have, if there wasn't such outrage, they probably would have claimed there wasn't enough money to help these nurses and stuff like that to fulfill the contracts. But what do we do now? In the same week, oh yeah, we'll get to her in a minute. Boris Johnson spent £900,000 of your hard-earned taxpayer money to repaint the plane. Now, I'm not going to lie, that's an ugly colour, yeah, but the new plane, I don't have a picture of it up, but it does look like a BA plane. And so he's got almost £1 million to spend on a plane, but he was saying we don't have enough money for poor kids. All right, mate. Okay, and so if we jump to this article here, so the reason why the government did this was because they claimed student nurses are not deemed to be providing a service. So they're saying like they're not providing any value, despite the fact that these are the nurses who potentially stepped up when people were dying, people were sick, people were lonely in the hospitals. They're the ones who spoke to them, who fed them, who helped them. That's who these student nurses were, who put up when the government's incompetency meant thousands, tens of thousands of people in this country died. Student nurses were the ones who helped step up and fulfill the shortfall that the government had allowed. And so Helen Watley, she can do this. She can say, she can cancel people's contracts, and she probably wouldn't have allowed them to be paid out if it wasn't such outrage. But this is her clapping for the NHS. So well done for shunning a generation of student nurses. Well done to you. And so if some of these people, if Conservative governments keep winning and they keep treating the NHS badly, if some of these student nurses left to other countries, I wouldn't blame them. I wouldn't blame them. At one point in my life, I thought, it's very unfair that, they can get their full qualification and just leave. But why would you want to stay in a country where the government treats you with contempt, that you're overworked and underpaid? Why would you do that? You would be silly not to take a contract in another country, because at the end of the day, sometimes you got to do what's best for you. And if what's best for you is to move to a country like Australia where they'll pay you more, and maybe you won't have to work as hard, maybe you won't live in a country which healthcare system isn't as stressed, why wouldn't you do that? You'd be silly not to. And so look, I'm going to leave the video there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.